In the dense pine and spruce forests of southern Småland, Sweden, a low mound of moss and grass blends so perfectly into the hillside that you can walk within 10 feet without noticing anything unusual. Only when you look closely do you see a weathered wooden door set into the earth, a small chimney barely breaking the surface, and perhaps a single tiny window glinting in the weak winter light. Subscribe and comment for more ancient videos. Thanks for help us. This is a Backstuga, literally slope-cottage, a type of dwelling that once numbered in the tens of thousands across southern Sweden. Built directly into the side of a hill, these homes used the earth itself as walls, insulation, and camouflage. They were small, dark, and humble, yet they kept generations of landless poor alive through some of the harshest winters in Europe. Official Swedish records counted just over 28,000 Backstuga in 1805. By 1885, the number had risen to around 50,000 as rural poverty deepened and land consolidation accelerated. By 1910, only 22,658 remained. Today, almost none survive in their original form. A handful have been restored as museum pieces. Ölås Torp near Falköping holds the largest intact collection, but the vast majority have collapsed into the soil, their sod roofs caved in, stone walls overgrown with moss and brambles until they look like nothing more than natural hillocks. The Backstuga is one of the most complete examples of a vanished housing type in modern European history, an entire category of shelter that disappeared in less than a century, not because it failed, but because the social and economic conditions that created it ceased to exist. This text explores the Backstuga in exhaustive detail: who built them and why, how they were constructed with almost no purchased materials, the thermal and structural genius that made them so effective in sub-zero winters, the harsh social reality of the Backstugusittare, slope-cottage dwellers, the three converging forces that erased them between 1827 and 1910, the few surviving examples that still stand, and the lessons these forgotten homes offer for modern off-grid, low-impact living. The Backstuga emerged in the 17th and 18th centuries as rural Sweden's population grew faster than available arable land. By the early 1800s, enclosure movements, storskifte and lagaskifte, were consolidating scattered village strips into compact private farms, displacing many cottagers and laborers. The torpare, tenant farmers, had leases and worked land in exchange for rent or labor. They were poor, but had a recognized place in the agrarian economy. The Backstugusittare were lower still, landless, often elderly, disabled, orphaned, or families without inheritance or kin support. They had no lease, no fields, no formal rights to cultivate. They existed on the margins, literally and legally. Swedish law and custom allowed them to build on useless land, steep rocky slopes, bog edges, forest margins too poor to plow, or strips of common land not yet enclosed. The landowner usually tolerated, or quietly encouraged, the cottage because it provided occasional day labor without formal obligations. Parishes were officially forbidden from housing paupers in Backstugor before 1846, to force reliance on the rote system of rotating poor among farms. But many ignored the rule because the alternative, feeding and housing the poor in the parish poorhouse, was far more expensive. The term Backstugusittare carried heavy social stigma. It meant you were at the absolute bottom of rural society. No land, no lease, no steady employment, often dependent on charity, odd jobs, or begging. Yet the Backstuga offered a degree of independence impossible in the rote system or poorhouse. You controlled your own fire, your own roof, your own small potato patch or chicken coop, if the landowner permitted it. For many, it was the best available option in a society with no welfare state. Construction, using the earth as the main building material. The Backstuga's defining feature was minimalism born of poverty. Builders followed one core principle: let the hill do as much work as possible. Site selection was critical. A south-facing slope was preferred because it received maximum winter sunlight in the northern hemisphere. the low winter sun would strike the front wall and small windows directly, providing passive solar gain on short days. In summer, the high sun was blocked by the overhanging hillside, preventing overheating. Excavation began with shovels and picks. Workers carved a rectangular space into the slope, typically 4 to 6 mm wide, 4 to 5 mm deep, and 1.8 to 2.2 mm high. Ceilings rarely exceeded 6 feet. The back wall and often parts of the side walls were simply the undisturbed earth of the hillside. Only the front wall, and sometimes one side, had to be built from scratch. Materials were whatever was free or cheap. Stone. In Smoland and rocky areas, field stones gathered from the land formed 3 walls. Stones were dry stacked or mortared with clay. Timber. In forested areas, log construction was used for the front wall or all exposed walls. Logs were often hand-hewn with axes. Roof. Rough planks or poles spanned the top. Over these went overlapping birch bark sheets for waterproofing. Birch bark was peeled in spring when sap rose. Then 2 layers of sod. First grass down against the bark, second grass up so roots would knit and grow. Within a year, the roof became indistinguishable from the hillside. Moss, grass, even small shrubs took root. The floor was packed earth, sometimes paved with flat stones. A clay or stone hearth sat against one wall, with a simple chimney of stone or clay pipe running through the sod roof. Windows were tiny, single-glazed or covered with animal bladder or oiled paper. Doors were low and narrow, forcing a stoop to enter. Practical for heat retention. Interior, 1 room, see 1525 Met 2. Furniture was sparse, a built-in bed frame with straw mattress, a table, stools, wall shelves. Light came from the hearth and tallow candles. The low ceiling and earth contact made the space feel cave-like, but it was warm. Thermal and structural genius, earth as free insulation. Sweden's climate is brutal. Winter lows of 15 degrees to 30 degrees, short days, long periods of sub-zero temperatures. Yet Backstuga stayed livable with minimal fuel. Key advantages: earth-sheltered walls, soil at 1.5 to 2 mere depth maintains 5 to 10 degrees year-round, geothermal stability. Back and side walls against earth acted as thermal mass, warmer than air in winter, cooler in summer. Sod roof, 15 to 20 centimeters of soil plus living grass, provided R-value equivalent to modern insulation. Grass roots knit the sod, preventing erosion. Birch bark shed water. South-facing orientation. Winter sun, low angle, struck front wall windows directly. Summer sun, high angle, was blocked by overhanging earth. Small volume, low ceiling, 1.8 to 2.2 meters, and compact footprint minimized heat loss. One fire, banked overnight with ash, kept the room above freezing. Modern earth-sheltered homes, US DOE studies, save 70 to 80% on heating versus above-ground structures. Backstuga achieved similar results with 0 modern materials. Life in a Backstuga. Survival on the edge. Backstugusittare were the rural underclass, day laborers, handicraft workers, elderly or disabled without family support, widows, orphans, or large families with no inheritance. Many had a tiny garden and kept a goat or chickens, if allowed. Charity, parish aid, or work from the landowner kept them alive. Life was hard. Cramped quarters, darkness, smoke, cold drafts from poor seals, constant damp in spring. Yet the Backstuga offered independence impossible in the rote system or parish poorhouse. Lagaskifte, land reform, 1827 onward, consolidated scattered village strips into compact private farms. Common land, where many Backstuga stood, was divided and enclosed. Landowners expelled squatters or forced them to relocate. Industrialization and urbanization, 1860s to 1910s. Factories, sawmills, railroads offered cash wages. Rural poor moved to Gothenburg, Malmö, Stockholm, or emigrated to America. Over 1 million Swedes left 1850 to 1910, many from Backstugusittare class. By 1900, Backstugor symbolized backwardness. Sweden wanted to project progress. Many were demolished as new housing appeared. By 1910, official counts dropped sharply. After that, the category vanished from records. Cottages collapsed, sod roofs caved in, stone walls became moss-covered mounds. Surviving examples and modern preservation. Ölås Torp, near Falköping, Västergötland. Sweden's largest preserved collection. Restored 1700s, 1800s Backstugor with authentic interiors. Hearths, earth floors, low ceilings, open to visitors. Daläng Stuga, near Konga, Småland, 1859, cottage built by an ironworks laborer. Restored by Mariana and Anders Arnegård, now a writer's retreat. Daläng, near Herestad, Småland. Little John's Backstuga, early 1800s. Restored with stone walls, birch bark, sod roof. Family tragedy preserved in local lore. These sites keep the memory alive, showing how the poorest solved shelter with earth, stone, and ingenuity. Backstuga prefigure modern earth-sheltered design, south-facing orientation, thermal mass, living sod roofs, minimal above-ground exposure. They achieved comfort with one fire because earth moderated temperature extremes. Modern off-grid builders use similar principles: rammed earth, bermed walls, green roofs, to cut heating or cooling costs 70–80%. They also highlight social context. Architecture reflects society. Backstuga existed because rural poverty existed. When poverty lessened, industrial jobs, emigration, welfare, the homes vanished. Today they remind us that simple, low-cost building can house people in harsh climates, if society allows it. The Backstuga was never romantic. It was a desperate solution for people with no alternatives. Yet it worked. Thermally brilliant, materially minimal, socially pragmatic. Tens of thousands once dotted Swedish hillsides. Most are gone, collapsed into the earth they came from. A few survive as museums, retreats, and quiet testaments to resilience. The physics hasn't changed. Earth still insulates. South slopes still catch winter sun. Sod still grows. What disappeared was the necessity and the willingness to live so simply. In an age of energy crises and housing shortages, the Backstuga asks, how much do we really need to stay warm, dry, and alive? The answer is surprisingly little: a hill, a door, a fire, and the courage to dig in.